Welcome to Audio Products Podcast. We are meeting with pro audio industry veterans, founders, product managers, UX designers, to learn how they build and manage the products we all love. You will get tips how to navigate your career in audio and how to develop a successful audio product, from musical instruments through audio plugins and gaming middleware up to music distribution platforms or consumer electronics like headphones, mics, and even automotive speaker systems. Enjoy. Hey, Brad. Good afternoon.
Hey, Wojtek, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you for joining the show. I'm super happy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been listening. I only got started earlier this year, and I know you've been going longer than that, but I think I've heard most of the episodes, and they've just been incredibly valuable. So really grateful for what you're doing here.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for your feedback. This is actually what keeps me going. So like receiving such a positive feedback is always great, but especially it's so nice when it comes from like veterans, industry veterans like yourself. So it's always such a big gratification. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wish when I was coming up, a resource like this was so accessible. I was fortunate to have really, really good mentors, but I was trying to consume all the information I could, and something like this would have just been so incredible.
Thank you. So listen, let me tell to our listeners and those who also watch on YouTube about today's episode, and I'll also let you introduce yourself. That's the best. But today we are talking about another segment of the market, which is sound design, and about tools for sound design and markets, for sound design market. And we do it because Brad is a head of product in Pro Sound Effects, the company that do sound effects. And, we'll just actually talk a little bit in a second. And let me hand it, to you. So I won't do introductions. Maybe you can tell a little bit about your story and, how you got to where you are today. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at Pro Sound Effects for just over 2 years now. Had a product role for just a year. Preceding that, I was just consulting for Pro Sound Effects, and it sort of ended up that this head of product role needed to be filled, and it's an awesome team, so I was really excited to step in. Before that, my first job in product management was actually at Isotope. I had not worked in product management at all before that. I was really a user. I was a musician and an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really took a chance on me and shaped me. And I had some incredible mentors there, and just learned so much. And then transitioned out of Isotope and worked at a few other startups, both in audio and outside of audio, doing product management, product marketing, strategic consulting, that kind of thing. And it's a great community. It's kind of a small world. Like, so many of the guests are either mentors of mine or colleagues that I'm, working with every day, because it's a great group of people who I have found to be really willing to help each other out. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it were not for a lot of your guests, and if it were not for a lot of the people in the audio product community who are willing to
absolutely
step in and lend a hand.
I have the same feeling. Absolutely. So, can I ask you what, you mentioned that you made music before actually all these tech careers, so what instrument did you play? What music did you make?
Yeah, I studied bass trombone very seriously, and my plan was to be an orchestral bass trombonist. But that, there's one in every orchestra, and I did a lot of jazz playing as well, but there's one in every big band. So, it was challenging. I enjoyed it a lot. I still love playing music. But brass instrument, any instrument, I think, really, but brass instruments, especially with sort of the physical demands of the embouchure, and it's very hard to keep up with it if I'm not doing it every day in a very disciplined way. So now I basically play keyboards primarily, and and I love that, and I enjoy that, and I make music that way. And I actually made more of a living as a keyboard player than I ever did as a trombonist. But
Oh, okay.
uh, it was it was really rewarding. You know, I feel like keyboards are great for anybody who likes to muck about with gear, and also
I
have a
agree.
lot of different textures available to you, whether it's piano or organ or Rhodes or Wurlitzer. Or, you know, you can just get into all these variations, and it's a kind of fun world to explore.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. Uh, yeah, I also like got into keyboards so much. Yeah, and
It's an
you can actually
expensive hobby, though.
expense. Yeah, my wife, jokes. I mean, we see like all these memes, right? I mean, that's my New Year resolution. I won't buy any new synthesizer this year. Like 10 minutes later, thank you for your order.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we get this thing. We have a 4-year-old, and like we have an electric piano at home, but it was like
Mm-hmm,
I was very deliberate about choosing the electric piano that had the least amount of buttons and the most robust stand possible, because I just
mm-hmm.
didn't want it to tip over on him or something. Because we had a Wurlitzer in our house for a while, and I was like, if this tips over on him when he was, a toddler, he could really get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, small apartment in New York City, you can't have all your gear out. Um, but
Understood, understood.
but
Yeah,
I still now we have so much great stuff and plugins, and it's not hard to get to a great sound pretty quickly.
true, 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 true. Oh yeah, I could talk for about it for let's not get this way.
We'll start a separate keyboards podcast. How about that?
Keyboards podcast. Yeah, that could be a nice one. Um, all right. So can you tell a little bit about like you mentioned that actually you got into pro sound effects through some consult. I mean, maybe also like this path to product management. You mentioned that your first product was on Isotope, right? So but how come actually a product manager just like out of like a yeah, so was it like a somebody like a bet on you, or is this just like a you learn about product management and say, hey, this could be something I and I could enjoy? How come it's actually this specific role?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's mostly that somebody took a bet on me, or a group of people at Isotope sort of advocated, like, hey, we think this guy could do this.
Mm-hmm.
But I really had no idea what product management was.
Mm-hmm.
I was super green. I still feel like I'm still learning so much. Um, but when I did learn, the sort of story of how I got there was, I went to graduate school uh, after I had been touring as a musician for a long time, and I taught music for a while, and then I decided I want to go back to graduate school and sort of set a new career path.
Mm-hmm.
And the intention there was actually to get more into music production in a very disciplined way. But
Mm-hmm.
I actually became sort of attracted by the technology side, and learning more about acoustics, psychoacoustics, um, electrical engineering, very basic signal processing, that kind of stuff. And many of the alumni from that program were working at Isotope or working at other companies in Massachusetts, here in the US, like Avid, like Mark and the Unicorn, Cakewalk. A lot of those
Mm-hmm.
companies were based around Boston. So they would come back and talk to our AES chapter at the school and talk about what they were doing. And a couple people who ended up becoming teammates when I went to Isotope came back, and they were talking about working at Isotope. And they were explaining the different roles and responsibilities. And when they talked about product management, I was like, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. And I sort of set my sights on it. Like, I want to be a product manager at Isotope someday. And I applied for 4 to 5 million jobs between graduate school and actually getting the job at Isotope. But I remember
Mm-hmm.
when that product management job got listed, I was like, oh my gosh, I really want that job, but I don't think I'm ready. Like, I had sort of put it on a 5-year time horizon. I thought I had a lot of work to do before I got there, but I threw in an application, and I was just really, really fortunate that you know, when I was at Isotope, if we had a job listing, like, there were hundreds of people applying.
Yeah.
So I was just super fortunate that somebody saw my resume and said, let's just give this guy a call. And it's people there, I think, were really thoughtful about advocating for me, even though they saw I didn't have any of the experience they were looking for. They saw there's some potential here for somebody who could bring something to the organization and learn this craft of product management. So
Mm-hmm.
I was super, super lucky.
Well, you might be actually too humble because, after all, product management is actually knowing your customers and, as a professional musician and audio engineer, you are just like a probably best set for who can actually understand the customers better than like a user and customer, right? Of course, as it can be like a double or how do you call it, like a double-edged sword, as Rodrigo, right? You once mentioned on the podcast here,
Exactly.
because you can be
Yes.
super biased, but on the other hand, it's just really all the inside things, right? Inside out, and so.
Yeah, I definitely made that mistake uh, and learned it the hard way, even though people were sort of warning me against it,
Oh, oh,
of
okay.
like, assuming I was the customer in a lot of decisions. And I was fortunate to have a team who would sort of check me on that and be like, is this for you or is this for a customer? Like,
Hmm.
it's not bad if it's for you. It's still a worthy idea, but like, just check yourself on this. Do you have customer feedback that backs this up? Or do you have an intuition about sort of indirect customer feedback um, that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Tomasz who was talking about like customers don't always tell you what you need to know from like that sort of strategic level.
Mm-hmm.
They might give you very good pointed feedback on like UX or a feature or something like that, but um, it it's like I got caught in that trap of like not being able to distinguish between my own opinions and my own intuitions and actual customer feedback, where I try to get a bit more disciplined when I'm working through requirements or working through feedback
Mm-hmm.
and be like, okay, I'm going to give the designer some feedback and this is personal
Mm-hmm.
versus I'm going to give the designer some feedback and this is coming directly from a customer versus this is something I've intuited that sort of fits between those things.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I think about this quite a lot. It's just like this, because many people, actually, some experienced entrepreneurs and product managers say that actually, and even music producers, like, I think it was Rick Rubin who mentioned, right, that if you do something, it has to come from, it must be yours. Otherwise, if you actually do it with the intention of pleasing customers, it will probably be terrible. And I think there was somebody on the meetup in Berlin who mentioned to me that he's trying actually to do this transpose, these ideas from music that comes from your heart and from your soul into product management. So instead of actually doing the opposite, make things that are, objectively good and measurable, and actually try to sort of, you know, make a product. He says, well, actually, this is what actually differentiate us, is actually we can do products that come from, our deep, you know, and I can see that this is super hard balancing act, right? I mean, many people here on this podcast, but also in private conversations, say it's actually, how can you, like balance this so it doesn't just simply, it doesn't lose your own soul and actually what you would like this product to be. On the other hand, so it still doesn't come how to say, detached from customer needs, right? This is something I'm not sure what do you think about it, or like what's how to actually do it properly.
Yeah, I, this really resonates with me, especially with creative products, because I do think like there is this art behind it, and that exists across all levels of the development team, like
Mm-hmm.
the art of development work that a software developer is doing, in the way that they elegantly execute some function or create some efficiency that makes things run more smoothly. And certainly in the design, and I would say there's even art in the way people test from a QA perspective of like, I know some testers who are just able to like nuance their testing
Hmm.
that just gets us more robust results in terms of, you know, I'm saying results in like they're giving us really good bug reports because it's like you just thought of a really creative way to test something that would have been an edge case we totally would have missed.
Mm.
And there is this creativity across all of it. And like I've sort of longed sometimes to work on some of those products where it's like I can just throw myself into this and just let it be a creative tool that is like an expression of my creativity. And I have some friends who have even sort of came out of Isotope, and where we were, you know, building for product lines that were established and customers that were established, and they were really good at that. Um, they had this inkling of like, I have my own projects I want to do, and they're so small that like they wouldn't necessarily work at an isotope scale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do want to build this, and I'm going to build it in a way that is totally unique to me, not tone deaf to what a customer thinks, but it's not for a customer uh, in terms of like trying to please them or trying to meet every need. It's really like I want to express myself through this medium of creating an instrument or creating an effect or creating a tool. And if that expression resonates with you, great, buy my stuff, use it, make something awesome
And that
with it.
works too, right? It can be
Yeah.
actually, yeah. You know, if you're not actually, this is what I love about music and audio industry in general is that it's not so much driven by like a growth at any cost, right? And many companies and many owners and founders say we are actually pleased, to be where we are, and which is so refreshing, if you just only hear about Amazons and others, and this is just like all growth, this, buy more, and now I can meet people who say I have 20 people, it's fine, or we just like that's perfect spot for us. We don't want to have more trouble. We just want to, deliver products we are proud of, and rather than, yeah, please, I don't know, investors or whatever, right? Whoever is actually like willing to make more, right? I mean, yeah, mm, that's I think, yeah, one of the greatest things about the music industry I love so much. Yeah, there is not so much of this overinflated, you know, egos and
Well, and um, so I transparently, like, I've never worked outside of the industry for like something that was maybe fintech or SaaS or
mm-hmm,
where you just have really robust data coming in from massive amounts of users and you can run an A B test in the morning and have conclusive results by the afternoon. Like, I
mm-hmm,
don't know what it's like, but if I read some of the classics in product management literature, whether that's Marty Kagan or Scott Belsky or something like that, I keep coming back to like, I think there's plenty of space for creativity in this. I don't think any of those recommendations are telling us you need to be 100% data driven all the time and set all your intuition aside. I think a lot of it is about the team collaboration and bringing all your experience to create great customer experiences. So I actually like just reflecting on times where somebody has come in from outside of the audio industry and worked on a team on a product that is inside audio or music technology. They've certainly brought a lot of perspective of like, oh yeah, we should be making a more data driven decision here. Maybe we need to set our own sort of emotional attachment to a project aside for a little bit and make sure it's viable. That's been really valuable. But I think there's also been a reverse of they've learned a lot about like, I can't just hide behind numbers and tests and SQL queries. Like, I actually need to get out there and talk to customers and experience what this is like with them in their creative process. And that is so much more visceral than a lot of them had experience with because they were used to sort of looking at numbers and making decisions.
mm-hmm.
And I think they learned a bit from it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And besides, like you mentioned, customers are not that good actually in expressing their needs and wants, so it's actually a role of product people actually to come up with some ideas, and we can be brave and a little bit bold on condition that we somehow reality check this a little bit, right? And given that it doesn't have to make maybe a lot of money, but still, so it's actually at least can sustain itself and reach break even, then yeah, it's just this balancing act. I mean, if I can just say one more thing, you mentioned, it's actually great that you mentioned Marty Kagan and all this so-called classics. I mean, not so-called actually. There's actually super, a lot of knowledge in it, and I always gently try in the podcast, how to say, sneak in a little bit of this knowledge into industry, especially that I have some small experience, and actually some even guests, a colleague from Beatport who mentioned like they did the process of discovery, right, which is actually Teresa Torres and continuous discovery habits, so what I'm trying to say is that, and I even wrote an article recently about this, is that because music industry doesn't like this corporate, there is actually slightly different values between all this like a big tech and tech pros, etc. So there is like this chance that we are going to, how to call it in English, throw a baby with the bathtub water,
Right.
So Amazon, we may not like Amazon Meta, whatever, but it doesn't mean that all this company do, especially on the process side, which is neutral. It's simply like some kind of practices of doing things that can be helpful, right? Qualitative, quantitative research, right? How to actually do properly, how do you call it, like um, like I say, customer visits and, well, okay, that's in music, it's easy, right? You go to the studio. Okay, but yeah, I mean, just like there are some techniques that we can learn. And one more thing that you mentioned, it's actually super interesting. I never thought about it. Is actually that they don't. Martin never says. At least this is what I hear you say. It doesn't say that it doesn't have to be creative process. It doesn't have to be passion underneath and willing to create products. I would only maybe bet that maybe because there is so many coaches and trainers, etc., and you cannot teach passion, or you have to teach tangible things. So it's like a little bit like a religion, right? There is a spirituality underneath, but people sell then processes, what I mean, hard stuff, right? So so ultimately at the end you get business model canvas and different like a frameworks and tools, because this is something that you can make money on. Yeah, but once again, underneath there is a creative process and passion for just at least it should be, right, some like a passion to bring great customer experience, right, and actually help people to solve their problems.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this also plays into maybe one of the conflicts that I've seen come up between product and go to market, of like those emotional connections that people make, where you're, maybe trying to sell benefits over features. Like that's oversimplification of it. But um, the having that connection to the emotional core of why you're doing something. And I think bringing that back to the development team is so important. Like when you can share a very personal story with the development team, I think it connects them to the problem and connects them to their best creative problem solving in a much stronger way than like, we need to make that number grow by half a percentage point. And like, based on a bunch of SQL queries I run, I think you need to do this. Like, it's just not as exciting. It's not as fun to work on, and it's not as fun to take to market necessarily, because that isn't, sometimes those things aren't emotional motivators. It's like, oh no, we're actually trying to reduce churn, so we're going to make it harder to unsubscribe. Like when I think about that stuff, it just makes my skin crawl. And I feel so fortunate that I work in this pocket of the industry where like there would be a mutiny on my development team if we asked them to build some dark UX that made it hard to unsubscribe. They would be like, no, absolutely not, because they're a bunch of musicians and they're like, no, I hate that. Like,
Yeah.
and it's really fortunate that I'm not trying to answer to a stakeholder or a set of KPIs that is like over the next quarter, you need to reduce churn by 0.5%, or you lose your job.
Yeah.
uh, I, we're, I think we're lucky on this side of things. And when I do like go to a product management meetup, that's a bit more general, like, and I hear what other people are sometimes motivated by or excited by. It's sometimes numbers like churn, and I'm like, if you can keep your churn down because you're truly delighting people and providing an exceptional value, then like 100% I'm on board. But like, if you're keeping churn down by like disrupting the user experiences and putting in dark UX stuff, like I can't get down with that.
Listen, I mean, this could be like probably an episode only on this. And actually, you gave me an idea, which is actually pretty controversial, because honestly, I believe that currently, especially social media, it's just only dark patterns. It's just like a base in built on dark patterns. And actually, a guest, one of the guests on the episode that actually aired today as we as we record the episode, she says his name is Sylvia, and she's a head of Wavelab, an incubator that coaches, help music startups and generally like creative startups from Munich, from Germany. And she says, entire humanity is high. We're just high on dopamine, and it's just like nobody. It's just the worst thing is that nobody cares, right? It's just like everybody is so high. It's just like everybody was smoking weed all day, and nobody's actually. If you are actually not, you are a weird person, right?
Yeah.
That's bad. That bad, So that's a
Yeah. That is super insightful. I'm eager to listen to that episode because this is something I felt is like these patterns have become so apparent and so prevalent, like even just showing up in like, well, I mean, you said social media, but like I noticed it was in something that my son was interacting with, and I was like, I can't believe you're doing that to a 4-year-old. Like it just felt like such an affront. And I was trying to empathize with whoever had to implement that. Of like, they're just trying to make a living, and they're just trying to hit whatever KPIs for whatever stakeholder. And
that's unfortunate. Yep, that's like a long conversation. I was actually there was one of the funniest moments on the podcast, and actually I'm just saying hi to Joshua Hodge, from Audio Programmer,
yes,
because we're
of course.
talking about the building plugins, and he mentioned why actually nobody is just standing against the digital revolution in there is no some kind of matrix like counter revolutionary youth. And I think we're just being boiled slowly, right? Not to care anymore. And yeah. And I mean, honestly, I'm just saying this, because personally, I have such a big problem with staying disconnected, and I'm strongly addicted. I have problem, I'm just trying to learn piano over the last couple of years, and I just learned how hard for me is to focus. The good thing that at least I'm reading books. I mean, I read quite a lot, and this is, I think, the only, let's say, safe space that I can still, stay focused. And it's actually how I go to bed with. I always need a book because I can focus my. But it's just like always being distracted. And even if I read it some media and like I think it was Disney or whatever, it's just like sorry, I don't want to be negative, but I mean, I wanted even to comment on LinkedIn, seeing this, that let's make short. Let's say, how can we make short videos, right? And it's just following this trend, since people have shorter and shorter attention span, we make TikTok. So now we are going to make, videos. Let's make songs, 30 seconds, right? And everything is just, oh no, it's just like we're just like jumping on the bandwagon of this, of the social media companies, right? And instead of actually creating some kind of culture, or at least trying to, but I think this is unfortunate thing with that business has to. It's not just meant to be, or at least being mission driven is very hard, right? In the world which is completely driven by some patterns led, sort of designed by big corporations, right? So it's very hard to be different and still make a living, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I do think, there are things that come back directly to this sound design market of like a lot of our customers and the people that I'm fortunate to get to interact with every day create narrative long form content, whether that is film or television or video games, interactive media, podcasts. Like they are passionate storytellers, and it's really sad when their craft starts to get pulled apart, or they uh, are no longer able to tell stories that arc over a couple of hours, but are suddenly like getting squeezed down into like you have to get somebody's attention in 30 seconds and keep it and then sell them something at the end of it. Like I think that's really hard for people as sort of natural storytellers, and that's I I I get so concerned about our customers who have these incredible skills for telling these beautiful stories and contributing to those stories with sound, like when it's a multimedia work. Uh, and often, we feel this, we get this piece of customer feedback of like sound and audio, even though George Lucas and David Lynch say that 50% of a movie is what you hear. It still is always secondary to the visual, and the they people are investing less and less in really thoughtful sound design or scoring or um, even just capturing dialogue really thoughtfully and making sure there's a lot of continuity there. And uh, that's just so unfortunate. It's a disservice to our humanity of like as we diminish the power of long form narrative storytelling. Um, it's really sad. But coming back to what you mentioned about mission driven businesses, like this is another place where I feel really fortunate of like if we think of the funnel, it's like, okay, I work at a technology company, and not just a technology company. Like we're not we have technology components to what we do at Pro Sound Effects, but it's more about working with artists and licensing material and stuff. But then I work like within this audio music space, which is already has this mission wrapped around it. And then I work at a really tiny company that has a single owner founder. Like I have the ideal situation where it's like we can be totally mission driven because we can just kind of do whatever we want. And, it's important that we can still sustain ourselves and invest in the future. But we can stand up to things where a larger company might not be able to because they're like, we have to meet shareholder expectations or VC board expectations or something like that. And coming out of other companies where I was under the pressure of maybe VC boards, always working for boards who are really smart people. I don't think any of them had ill intentions, but there is just that pressure of like, okay, I'm going to get my money out in 5 or 6 years. So like, how are you going to make some money versus just solve this problem, just support these artists, which is more the thing I have to answer to at the end of the day is like, did I help these artists? That's what I'm getting measured on at my work now.
So you see, this is a very, very nice introduction to, to Pro Sound Effects and actually your role, right? Because, it's obviously great to talk about other things, but we promise a little bit to talk about the sound effects market and work. And I'm just always sort of, sorry, you see, this is so much on my mind that I think in every episode I make this, like a step aside, to talk about, sort of ethical and other aspects. But I think it's just because it's just big part of my life today. But yeah, so let's then talk a little bit about so can you tell a little bit about the Pro Sound Effects? Like how big is the company? What do you actually do? And maybe also Yeah, so let's maybe start with that, and then we can go a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Pro Sound Effects was founded, I think it was 2004. So, been around for over 20 years. And at that time, it was licensing sound effects on libraries on CDs. So,
Hmm.
sending out CDs to people, and then that became hard drives to people, and then that became data transfers to people.
Hmm.
And the the what Pro Sound Effects does that is maybe slightly unique from other organizations that are colleagues of ours in this space. It's a very small market,
Hmm.
but we all know each other and enjoy each other. Uh, we work with artists who are like sound designers in Hollywood or working on major AAA games and huge films, and we say, okay, you've done all this sound design work across your life. How can we make all the field recordings that you've used in your work? How can we make those available to a larger community of sound designers? So we um, lots of times those collections are organized in a way that makes sense for that particular individual. They've been working with it for years. Maybe their assistant
Hmm.
understands how it's organized. But when it comes to like really thoughtful annotation and consistent metadata, uh, we use the universal category system, which was developed as an open source system, but spearheaded by Tim Nielsen at Skywalker and Justin, who built SoundMiner, and some other people. Um, we basically take these collections, get them structured, curated, uh, edited,
Uh-huh.
into a way that they can be distributed to other sound designers, and other sound designers can search through them and find the sounds they need and get access to these incredible sounds that big designers had big budgets to go capture. So an example would be a sound designer like Mark Mangini being able to go out into a desert and blow up a house for I don't know what film it was, but he's worked on Dune and all these crazy films. Like that's a massive budget. Or to go out and record military aircraft, like extremely hard to do that. How do we take those sounds that somebody had a big film budget to record and then make them available to a larger community of sound designers so they can work with them as well and do creative things and tell stories with them?
All right.
Then there's a lot of technology necessary to facilitate the distribution of those sounds and the monetization, and also internal tool sets that we need to develop to be able to annotate all those sounds
Hmm.
consistently, efficiently. So that's sort of the technology layer where a lot of the product management comes in.
Gotcha. Listen, before I like a deep dive on this, you mentioned something, it was like a universal
Category system. Yeah,
yeah,
UCS.
okay. Okay. Can you just, I mean, not so much into like a sound design, so I mean, to some amateur things, but I mean, can you just elaborate a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, and I should caveat that I am not a sound designer either. So I'm coming in a bit from the outside. So this may be a kind of colloquial description of it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a consistent way of defining categories, subcategories, and file names and metadata fields that are both embedded into broadcast wave files. And also, like in our case, we provide index files as a CSV that can go along with something. So um, the hope here is that somebody can import our libraries or our sounds right into any sound effects librarian software, whether that's SoundMiner or Basshead or Soundly. We make a free tool called SoundQ, um, and be able to search it really efficiently.
Oh, so that's why like a universal, because
Yes.
it's just like it can help. Actually, it's actually, I mean, used across the industry for by sound designers to have this like a store and how to say like a document their sound libraries. Gotcha.
Yeah, and this was a massive undertaking by Tim and Kai and Justin and the team, like just unimaginably huge project, but it has revolutionized this very tiny industry in a very constructive way, because now, like, if you are buying a sound effects library, it is likely in this system, which means that it is consistently organized with companion libraries. So it just
Mm-hmm.
makes it easier, if somebody is looking for a sound that might be hard to categorize or describe, they they're not going to have to go through a bunch of different folders that might contain it. it there's been like a thoughtful organization that kind of gets them in the right
Mm-hmm.
direction.
Gotcha. And so, the question that arises is, or, automatically, it's how does AI fit here, right? Because there is a lot, like a discussion about it in this intelligent search and, like how do you call it, like a similarity
Mm-hmm.
search and stuff, so probably this can push this kind of categorization forward, or I'm not sure if this is more like a jeopardize, something that jeopardize this, or more like a something make it, to like a turn it into even more advanced
Yeah,
search systems or engines.
this is what we stay up late and drink beer and talk about, is like, once a million sounds exist in a latent space, and the embeddings are available for those, and they can now be you know attached and searched across different vectors. Does this very careful categorization and annotation, sort of text-based metadata search, does
Mm-hmm.
that make it irrelevant? And then when you think about possibly attaching an LLM to one end of those things and saying, okay, well, I can describe something using text, and then the LLM will access across a bunch of different vectors and perhaps
Mm-hmm.
surface a result. Um, but we still see this like core metadata as really important, both in people understanding and being able to conduct a very simple text search and get very robust results quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this sort of documentation and preservation and historical layer that plays into this, of like, um, the embeddings might define what these sounds are. Let's say a vehicle sound, and it could be 1963 Fiat something or other. Uh, it needs some very specific information, like that model year and that manufacturer, and um, that kind of stuff is important to preserving, like, what is the original source here. And it's also important in any of these systems that are based on embeddings to have in the training data. So um, like, Audio Kinetic, like, thinking of Simon, they just released a similarity search feature that the team at Sony developed. Sony AI was doing some research,
Mm-hmm.
and they had actually built the similarity search feature based on looking at pro sound effects libraries, and they had some boom
Mm-hmm.
libraries in there too, uh, and creating basically a clap model to do similarity search. And when Sony told us about this, I just happened to have a call with Audio Kinetic the next day, and Audio Kinetic is part of Sony now.
Mm-hmm.
And during the Audio Kinetic call, we were like, "Wow, yeah, what's going to happen with all this AI stuff?" And I was like, "Hey, you guys are part of Sony. You should talk to this researcher over there. He's got this thing running. It works really, really well." And that connected the dots to make similarity search available in Wise. Um, and that's super exciting, like, the idea that a sound designer can engage with something creatively without being restrained to text-based search terms, and can, like, say, here's a footstep, give me a bunch of other footsteps that are similar to this. uh, it's just such a great, exciting, creative way of getting through
Mm-hmm.
things. And when I come back to uh, like, there are super cool tools like Sononym from the Renoise guys, and
Sorry, can I say it again? Synonym.
Sononym. It's like
Mm-hmm.
synonym but sonic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Synonym.
if you guys, the guys who make Renoise, the DAW. I think they're based in Berlin. I'm forgetting their names, but super smart group of people. They made this a sample librarian called Sononym, which has a similarity search feature, which is just super cool. Like I've only used it for music stuff, but you
Mm-hmm.
like you load a snare drum sample, and I've done this where I'll grab a sample off a record, but it's like I don't. There's other instruments in there, and I don't really want it. I'm looking for a bunch of snares that sound just like that snare on that record. Then it goes through all my sample libraries and like surfaces stuff that's similar based on
Hmm.
timbre, amplitude, and stuff like that. It's just a really fun way for me to look for snare sounds instead of being like clicking through and listening to them all. You know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Got it, got it, got it, got it. That's cool. So can you tell a little bit, you know, so I understand what's, you mentioned how that was actually my next question, how uh, Pro Sound Effects is different from other companies, but can you tell to the, for the sake of listeners who may are maybe not so much into, sound design, what are other like big companies and, what is the little bit some kind of like a market overview who is still there and,
Mm-hmm.
like what is the clients and, some kind of small executive overview of the sound design market.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very small thumbnail of a market. Um, the uh, we've been in there for about 20 years. There's another company called Sound Ideas based in Canada that has a fantastic library. They've been around for even longer, almost, I think it's more than 30 years. Great small family run company. Another company based in Germany called Boom Library.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're fantastic, and we collaborate with them closely. Also, sort of within the Boom family is A Sound Effect,
Yep.
which I think originated as a blog, but they sell a lot of independent libraries, which is awesome because it gives a great vehicle for people to say, I have enough material to make a library, but I want to sell it. And we we can't support all those independent artists. Unfortunately, we're just too small. So a sound effect gives a great outlet for that. Um, the team at Soundly is great. They originated in Norway, but were recently acquired by Epidemic Sound out of Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome team. And there are a bunch of others. Epic Stock Media is really good. Sound Snap's really good. So and I would say like this is an area where we might have category or coverage overlaps.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think of it, like sometimes the analogy of a record label might be good, where like I own a lot of jazz piano records, and like just because Oscar Peterson records came out on you know Blue Note in this era, doesn't mean I wasn't buying uh, Errol Garner records, on reprise at the same time. Like it's like they're both piano records. They're both
Mm-hmm.
really good. They both come out from different labels, but like there's something in it for everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's sort of how we see this market of like we probably compete for customers sometimes. There are customers who are looking for lower cost solutions, and we're probably not right for them most of the time. But uh, there are times when somebody is looking for a very particular sound or a really, you know, they need a Dolby Atmos recording of rain underneath a tin roof, recorded in a way that is so thoughtfully isolated that there aren't other environmental sounds
Mm-hmm.
that are going to distract from that rain sound. Like that's a place where we're leaning into sort of premium quality stuff. Boom
Gotcha.
has done an incredible set of libraries with the Shepsor TF3D system, which does these really beautiful ambiances for Atmos, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a massive investment that they've had to take on, but it's a beautiful way to document these environments and create really powerful immersive experiences for the sound designers who are working with them.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's like that's speaks to me quite a lot. But as you know, I mean, just completely as an amateur. But since I know Tomek from Zilia very well, and
Mm-hmm.
we are good friends, and he's by the way one of my mentors. Like who got me into the industry, and um, by the way, so say hi to Tomek if he listens to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know him personally, but I've admired him and certainly Zelia for so long. I was when I saw that podcast, which I saw, you know, much later after I'd consumed some of the other ones. I was just so excited to hear more about their story and what they went through. It was
yeah,
fun.
that was the first episode actually. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was actually still like a webinar. So initially I didn't plan to do the podcast. I mean, hey, I'll just do like a few like live shows on social media, etc. And it just
Yeah.
received so much positive feedback. I say, huh, it sounds like a good idea for the podcast, right? Nobody talks about, like a product and launching products, in the audio space. Yeah. So it was really like an accident. But I mean, what I was trying to say is that as one of the, I got Zilia microphone as a, just like I got interested by ambisonics and generally immersive audio because of Tomasz, and started to record from time to time, even sometimes to show to a friend, to some friends how cool microphone I have. So just, hey, let's go to the city center, and I just say, wow, it's just, I know that ambisonics it's not made, it's more like a niche format, and yeah, it's not super commercially spread, but I just learned how amazing tool it is for recording ambiances. That, I mean, literally I started just as my own hobby project, go with this microphone from time to time here and there. I just have it in my trunk, and if it's just a great, like I hike quite a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I just live in the south of Poland. There's quite a lot of mountains, right? So it's just an hour, and it's always this conflict: shall I just hike and be in the nature, or like I bring my microphone? But I mean, sometimes you have like nice waterfalls and like a rivers when there is like so quiet, etc. So you can record amazing ambiances, and I just learned that the microphone is amazing to record this ambiances, right? I mean, haven't learned yet how to, I don't know, turn it into some Atmos content and stuff like this. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just collecting this. Maybe in the future, I'm obviously have very little time because of the podcast and daily job at Avid. Yeah, but it's just, this is why when I met you, I got so excited, because I say I'm just like a, you know I don't know if someday in the distant future I'm not I won't become some part-time sound designer, because it's so cool actually to go somewhere, especially that very often it's just you stay quiet, etc. So it's also like a, how to say, I learned that this is great. Some people like do fishing, for example, or like
Mm-hmm.
collecting mushrooms, because it's also like a way you can stay quiet in nature, or like, I don't know, take pictures of of animals, right? Because it's just, you can meditate, right? You're for a long time, you have to still sit still. So I just learned that this kind of recording can be more like a meditation, where I go sit on the riverside and just like for 2 hours, right? It's amazing.
You know, I'm so glad you said that, because I do feel like this is something that is a bit um, unique about recording audio. And I do something similar. I don't have an iCilia mic. I did at a previous company, but I just have one of these Zoom ambisonic mics.
Hmm.
And I find it is a really meditative way of engaging with my surroundings without disconnecting. Because, like, if I use my phone to take a video, I'm now looking at the screen, I'm
Hmm.
interacting with the screen. But if I just have this and some headphones, I'm still engaging with the surroundings and able to take it all in. So if I'm sitting there by a river, I don't feel disconnected from the river. I don't feel like the technology is in the way of that experience. I feel like the technology is just encouraging me to spend more attention on my hearing sense.
Did you ever try mindfulness? Like a Zen meditation. It's just one of the exercises, actually, like a focus on this sound, right? Without
Yeah.
actually labeling in your mind. So actually try to be completely focused and connected with the surroundings. Yeah. So it just reminds me of like a Zen meditation, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, it's sort of funny that it's like technology enabled Zen meditation, but there is something about like listening to the binaural renderer coming right off this thing that is sort of surreal, and it heightens that experience because you can turn it up and um, you're consciously listening, and you might not notice that an airplane's going by when you're just hiking in nature, but when you're listening through these transducers, you're like, whoa, that airplane's really loud. And then you take your headphones off and you're like, yeah, it is really loud. Whoa, that's crazy. Or you might not notice one bird sound just when you're walking, but then when you put the headphones on, you're like, bird sound is taking my head off.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that bird? Now you have your binoculars out and you're engaging with it. So
Zen
I
master.
yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. And like this is we sort of have a habit internally at Pro Sound Effects, just like on Slack, if somebody's traveling and they hear a cool sound, they'll just post it in our
Nice.
channel, like a Slack channel or something. And that's
Cool.
these this isn't what shows up in Pro Sound Effects libraries that you pay money for. It's just like we are
Yeah, I got it's
always
more like a hobby.
yeah, we're always listening in the same way that like somebody who forages for mushrooms isn't necessarily doing that for a commercial enterprise. They're just like, there are mushrooms in the woods. I like finding them and eating them, you know?
Yeah. That's that's my entire childhood. We used to hike with my father and like collect mushrooms. And I mean, I'm even till today, I sometimes collect mushrooms just to you have like a how to say scrambled eggs with mushrooms
Yeah.
or yeah. I mean, I don't do fishing anymore because to me sounds a bit cruel right now. But I mean,
Yeah.
still, I was like sailing and in the evenings we just like do some spinning, and it's actually your own made, like like caught the fish and you just made it and together like a fresh bread, right? It's just such a cool thing. So yeah, such a sound design this way. Yeah, that's I
Yeah.
never thought about it this way. Yeah, but I mean, just like it came up to me when I just heard these recordings afterwards. Honestly, I don't even monitor those recordings. I just simply sit on the like a riverside and just turn on the mic, and I'm just like obviously very attentive because I want to sort of see if this is what's going on, and yeah, I need to stay quiet because I need to have a clean recording, right? So I'm just quite talkative person, so this is those moments that I can be really quiet and not to make any noise by, I don't know, scrolling phone, and just be like making some sound with my, I don't know, even like footsteps or whatever. So I need to be super, right? Super because Zen master.
Yeah. But it forces that presence of like, oh, I'm doing this thing with intention now. And I think that's great. The other thing that I find interesting, like if I have this and I have some headphones on
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in a random train station somewhere, just like because I think it sounds cool,
Mm-hmm.
people come up to me and they're like, what in the world are you doing? And I think initially they're kind of like, well, this guy's weird.
This guy's weird. Yes.
But then you end up having a conversation with somebody. And for me, when I'm traveling in an environment that is new to me, that's exciting. I'm too shy to initiate that conversation on my own, but it's interesting when somebody comes over and they're like, what are you doing with that strange thing? And then I say, oh,
I
i'm,
have it.
I'm recording the sound of this, listen to it. And often for them, unless they have a background in audio or something, it's the first time they've listened consciously to sound
Mm-hmm.
reproduced through headphones in real time with zero latency. And it's like you watch their mind explode. And that is really affirming. And then I get to have a conversation and be like, yeah, this is what I do for a living. Like I help people create sound effects and market them. I've
That's
met some
funny.
incredible people that way.
That's funny. That's really funny. So you see, you touched another subject I wanted to ask. So I know you are not like a pro sound designer yourself, but you work uh, with them. So do you think nowadays with all this technology shift, etc., so is it nowadays hard to become a sound designer? Is it hard to sustain yourself being a sound designer? The reason I'm asking is because this podcast, it's also meant to be some kind of career, like inspiration for people who are into audio or starting their career in the audio. So I just sort of wonder, if somebody thinks, oh, that's such a cool, like a domain to be in, so.
Yeah, I am on the periphery of this. My impression, though, is it's not that different from being a musician, where it
Mm,
is perhaps easier to be a musician now than it has ever been before. You
mm,
can you can access a DAW for free on your laptop probably
mm,
and record music. It it is becoming exceedingly difficult to make a living as a musician. And I think there's probably something similar in sound design of like the tools to
mm,
do sound design are becoming democratized. Like you it's not like the old days of sound design where you would maybe need an Agra and a very good microphone and a moviola and all the devices that were used in film editing to create thoughtful sound design. Um, you can now do that all in Audacity, pretty much. Um, but making a living in sound design is getting increasingly difficult. Um,
mm,
and unfortunately, because I think at times people value it less, because coming back to that mindfulness thing, they are connected less to their auditory sense. Like
mm,
other senses might have stronger reactions for them, and they may value that auditory experience less. Where I push back on this is that I think, our auditory sense is something that develops. I don't actually know the science on it, but really early. Like there are these studies that a baby can recognize their mother's voice,
oh yeah.
within first few days or something. That is before their eyes are necessarily open. I
Mm,
mean, or they're opening briefly. Uh, I don't know how taste and smell, touch definitely has a lot of reaction at that point, but like this auditory sensation is uh, critically important. And, you know, most people have really heightened auditory sensibility. Like they can tell by the intonation or the inflection that somebody
mm.
puts on a word what the emotion is behind that word.
I wanted to make a joke, but it's just a nasty joke, especially your wife, right?
Yes, totally. But and I mean the other side of this is also like if you think about it, this doesn't happen on modern phones too much, but if we think about landline telephones, like that was a severely band limited, highly compressed signal,
Yeah,
and you could still recognize when you picked up the phone
yeah,
somebody's voice on the other side.
yeah. That's actually like I think evolutionary thing, right? We have to this kind of how you call it, like um empathy. There are even some, I think, in the brain, some cells that are responsible to, like for us to feel this, because yeah, this is how you can stay safe, right? And actually, first of all, be looked after by your mom or parents, or also like be recognize the danger if somebody is actually angry, and maybe some groups, etc. So I think it's just like something that evolved in our brains, throughout the entire you know millennia, right?
Yeah. And with that, I do hope that we can bring more attention to this craft of sound design as a creative tool. Um, you know, from our perspective as a company, we think of it in this sort of preservation and historical record thing of like there are a lot of sounds that may not exist on the planet anymore, whether that's because it's from an extinct species of a
Mm-hmm.
bird or animal, or a car that isn't made anymore,
Mm-hmm.
or even just thinking like, so we sell a lot of urban ambience libraries. These, so somebody worked very hard to capture the sound of Krakow or Paris or New York
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. What New York sounded like even 2 or 3 years ago is
Wow,
so different than what it sounds like now because of electric vehicles and the vehicle alert systems and stuff.
this is so interesting. This is so interesting. It's like a sound legacy. It's just creating some kind
Absolutely.
of like a human legacy, but in a not in the, let's say, like books, but I mean in the large libraries of sound. Interesting. And 100 years later, people be, oh, this is like, the New York sounded like, with the tube and all these taxis and and
Yeah.
traffic jams. And interesting. Never thought about this. That's
So, this is something that we think of a lot of, like, if someone is trying to make like, so much of our work is wrapped up in entertainment by nature, in audio, music, media. We work on a lot of entertainment, but
mm-hmm.
um, where are those places where we have kind of a responsibility to preserve the sonic legacies of
Sonic Legacy. Oh,
our
beautiful.
our planet? Like, um, I it's I guess it's a curiosity, I guess it's a novelty, but I'm genuinely interested in what I live in New York, what New York sounded like in 1945.
Oh yeah, and I'm such a nerd for like or like like in New York in 20s, 30s. I'm actually trying to master like a New York on the piano right now, which
Oh
actually
yeah.
takes me like I'm actually learning entire year. I'm just still a very rookie on the piano. It's just my third or fourth year, and I always, when I just play this, and and I say, oh, I'm just trying to imagine how New York was in 20s and 30s, and it's just like such a, and yeah, and with all the beautiful fashion and all the sounds of the cars, like early cars, and it just must be so amazing.
Yeah, totally. And like, I don't know if you ever get this, but you'll listen to a recording, like a phonograph recording that's been preserved from early 20th century or something like that. And I always have this question of, like, did their voice really sound like that? Or is
Hmm.
there something in this recording media transduction mechanism that is distorting that? I'm just so curious. And like, if I'm curious about that, 100 years later, or I guess 120 years later now,
Mm-hmm.
what will my grandchildren be curious about? And what can I do to help document that now and make sure that these things are preserved?
Interesting. That's very interesting.
And this shows up for us as a business, where we are often contacted by the estates of a Academy Award winning sound designer, and they say,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, they've passed on, and I've inherited this massive collection of reel to
Wow.
reels or 35 millimeter mag or DAT
Mm-hmm.
tapes or something, and I don't know what to do with it, but it's my mother or father's life's work. I don't just want to throw it away.
Oh, amazing.
um, I'm sitting next to a box of DATs that just came in from one of those, and
Man, that's such a. I'm jealous. That's so nice.
yeah, I get goosebumps thinking about it though, like, because like I open up the notebooks and like there are all these movies that I grew up with, and like the reels are sitting next to me, and like it's going to cost a lot of money to transfer this, and we're never going to make money off that, but we're fortunate that we're a small company where we can be like, you know what, that needs to be preserved. We're going to do it, because if we don't do it now, that media will actually stop working.
Do you use some, I don't know, some grants or some, like do some institutions support, this kind? I mean, let me ask you why. Let me tell you why I ask, because my piano teacher, she's actually like her like a main job, except for like a teaching piano, especially to children and some other people who like me. But she's actually, I don't know how to say that, a musicologist. She's like a PhD in musicology, and she what's main she works for like Polish Academy of Science, and she's actually trying to document music that is actually about to disappear. And so she's just like trying to find some, especially regional, like or either some elderly people who, I don't know, know some songs that come from this, specific region with specific dialect, and there may be like the one last person in the, entire country who actually can sing those, right? And she
Yeah.
obviously like write those, write the music, so try to document everything, and she even wrote few like scientific papers about it. And I know that there is actually most of their work actually they do is actually through grants, and like a Polish government support this because it's a, like a heritage, like a cultural heritage of the country, right? So there was one wondering, if you actually use this kind of, like support, or is there like any support like this in US?
Yeah. So um, a year ago there was some support for this. A lot of the support has gone away.
Mm,
We had not engaged with it directly uh, because we're a private company. What we have been researching is how we sort of get the scholarly research community in the same way that
mm-hmm.
ethnomusicology exists, where there is really a discipline and a lot of research put
Mm-hmm.
into this
Mm-hmm.
for those preservation reasons. And I think people really value it deeply. There is a very robust audio archiving, preservation, restoration uh, community. AES has a deep technical committee that focuses on this. They've had some great conferences. There was an incredible one at the
Mm-hmm.
Library of Congress Center
Oh,
here in the United States. And then there's the ARSC. I'm trying to remember what the acronym is. Association for Recorded Sound Collections, I think. Um, they have a conference every year.
okay.
And so they are thinking about this, but they are often spread across, you know, all sorts of types of audio that they're trying to preserve. So, in many cases, they might be talking about historical audio of
Mm-hmm.
speeches or presentations or something like that that
Oh
documents.
yeah, some like a history, like a historical figures, like I don't know, some presidents and yeah, like a speech of a yeah, some old U.S. president, yeah, like
Yeah,
from
yeah,
90s.
absolutely. And then, of course, music, like because I'm adamant that we continue to preserve that, but this idea of sort of preserving just sound as its own thing, sound and space. Like we have this we have this discussion sometimes, especially in the licensing of audio data sets for tools like similarity search and stuff like that. There is this massive voice analysis, like there are massive data sets available for voice. Um, and the big problem they have in the voice data community is they're missing variations in languages, good
Mm-hmm.
gender distribution, representation across a plurality of cultures, those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. And they have these preservation things of like dying languages, like
Mm-hmm.
these are languages spoken by populations which are shrinking and they need to be preserved
Mm-hmm.
from a historical perspective. Then there's music, and there's genre diversity, and there's trying to get coverage there. Then there's every other sound in the universe,
That's
and it's massive.
I never thought about it. Honestly, it's just like you open my mind to completely new like a dimension. Yeah, because I always thought about this, like you say, like instruments, speeches, and but then it's actually entire ambience, right? And it's just like a
Yeah, and then practical sounds, hard effects, diegetic sounds. Like, what does it sound when you type on a keyboard? Like,
huh.
um, the sound of me typing on a keyboard now is very different than the
From
sound of somebody typing on a keyboard in 1983.
oh yeah, I
And
remember my
that
first PC. Yeah,
totally, like you can hear that clunk in your head, I bet, and it's very
I still
visceral.
can. Mm.
And I bet you could hear the difference. You're trained in audio, so that gives you a bit of a bias, but you could probably hear the difference between the computer keyboard that you used and an exact same model of that computer keyboard when it was brand new,
Mm.
or your computer keyboard in your room where that computer was, just because of the early reflections around it. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
such a visceral connection to some of those sound, those oral cues. And this is what we're really passionate about as a company, of like there's this whole sonic world out there that we have a responsibility to preserve and make available to people to tell stories.
Mm.
So if you're trying to tell the story of somebody working on their first PC in 1983, it needs to feel so authentic that when you watch that film, you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm right there.
Mm.
You're not distracted by like that's not what keyboards sounded like in 1983, you know.
Amazing. That's so interesting. Yeah, there's so
So
many interesting sounds. Yeah, and it's all go away. Like it's, like a sonic extinction.
yeah. So what coming back to what you mentioned about like grant funding and stuff like this, right? I think this is where we are trying to collaborate with research institutions and academic institutions, libraries, to say we see this as a massive unmet need in the sort of preservation space.
Hmm.
We are limited in how much we can take on because we're a commercial enterprise. Like we have to pay our bills and uh, keep our
But
jobs
you
at the
see,
end of the day.
so we are actually quite fortunate because there is so, and actually EU also have quite a lot of those grants, that, what I'm trying to say. It's even commercial institutions, if you are actually able to explain, I mean, of course, there are reasons that some of those have to be distributed, like a shared freely, and there are certain rules, but I mean they are still available for private and enterprises as well. So some companies, I mean, I think there's also like in accessibility in some areas where you probably won't be able to make a lot of money because this is not such a like a big target market, but still you can, well, it's not maybe the best way to run business, but I mean there are, it's like, listen, I mean, there are other like a space industry. It's also probably one that you don't make so much money, and because it's just all through grants from in governmental, and some, yeah, maybe with some few exceptions like obviously Mr. Musk, but I mean, he also probably like lives off right the government grants, right? And yeah, so that's all. Yeah, but
Yeah,
anyway, that's so interesting. You opened my mind to so many new, like dimensions of this industry. If I can just like share my, like a small dream with you, it's, as I used to, and actually one of, it's not one the made by me. By when I was like a younger, I used to do percussion instruments, and I was actually wearing dreadlocks, and very much into reggae music and smoking a lot of weed, and this was my sort of like a high school passion, sort of,
sure.
and actually playing the reggae, it's like a amateur band and stuff. And
Yeah,
the heartbeat bass and drum and bass is a heartbeat, right? They
totally.
usually reggae musicians say it's just like this root that is rooted in your body and in your like has to be connected with your deeply with your heartbeat. But some of my friends, they just spread all around, because they move to other countries as well. And I know that some of them pursue professional, like I went, for example, to learn how to play djembe with some, masters in Africa, I don't know even which country. And it was always my small part, like this kind of forgotten instruments, and like it's cultures were, always like a small passion of mine. And I shared this idea once with Noam Levinberg, right? Who from no Safari Audio, one
Oh
of the
yeah, yeah,
guests, right?
yeah, yeah.
Who was here and say, hey, I did like a library, like, and he shared like there is actually still a website, and there are some like a lot of different instruments, and yeah, and turn into virtual instruments. Yeah, so I say it's so you see, carry on. If you have ideas like this, you have to do this, right? And I'm
Yeah.
always saying, hey, we can maybe combine this into with a vacation, and go to different countries. I don't know. I have friends, and like my coworker here in I mean, initially helped me to start the podcast is from Azerbaijan, and
Mhm.
and it's just such amazing also culture, and such amazing like area. There must be some grandmasters playing some like amazing instruments. Going to North America, and to meet Americans, right? I mean, like a native, say
Absolutely.
like what do you call it? Um, uh, how do you call Indians actually properly in a
Native
second?
Americans or
Native Americans,
First
okay, or
Nations. Yeah,
First Nations.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
that's what I wanted to say. Sorry. Yes. So I mean, that's that's I would love to actually spend some time with them and actually see how they what instruments they play, and how they like a singing. I mean, there's some amazing those just yeah. So much things to so many things to do and so little time, isn't it?
yeah. Totally. Well, and I mean, you know, I think a hero for many of us in the music and audio recording community is Alan Lomax, who was, you know, capturing, from an ethnomusicographic perspective, capturing these recordings that otherwise would have been lost. And what I think what I fear is, even though everybody has a fairly high quality recording device in their pocket, that doesn't mean those recordings are well organized or preserved in a way that is sort
Mm-hmm.
of thoughtful from a preservation and
Mm-hmm.
perspective. I I mean, I even think about this sort of notion of, I feel like a lot of people think that everything is somewhere on the internet. Like that article you read in a magazine 20 years ago, it's on the internet somewhere. So why bother preserving that magazine for 20 years ago? I don't think it's all preserved very well,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where, like, I think preservation and uh, observation and recording and capturing recordings, indexing recordings, annotating recordings is essential and needs to be very intentional. Like, it can't be passively, yeah, I've got that
Mm-hmm.
recording somewhere. I have that long lost recording of Leadbelly somewhere. Like, that's not what Alan Lomax said. Like, he was preserving those things, and with with the librarians who work with it now, I'm sure, have their reservations with how he preserved it and how he took notes, but he was doing his best to make sure that
Hmm.
stuff was preserved.
So are there any big other names like in the sound design community that people from the listeners should know?
Well, I mean, I would say some of the biggest names that uh, come up often, like Ben Burt, who did a lot of the Star Wars films, and so much of the George Lucas material, and I mean, that is only scratching the surface at the beginning of his career. But iconic sound designer Walter Murch, iconic editor of film, but also deeply connected with sound. Alan Howarth, Ann Krober, and Alan Splett, who worked together on many of the David Lynch films. Uh, Modern people, Paula Fairfield, Dave Whitehead, Mark Mangini, Richard King, Richard L. Anderson.
Hmm.
Uh, these A lot of these, I apologize, they're pro sound effects artists, so that's why they're top of mind for me. But um, they're just so incredible at what they do, and they're so passionate about what they do, that they're top of mind for me. So uh, these are just people who have devoted their lives to telling stories with sound and making sure that, whether it's a filmmaker or a musician or somebody else, that they have the sounds they need to tell their stories.
Amazing, amazing. We'll just you know run AI to just bring all these notes, take notes, and actually post. So people can actually like get to know their work and a little bit more. Um, Brad, I know you're just slowly running out of the time, so I just
No,
wanted
it's unfortunate.
yep, yeah, and this is such a great conversation indeed. And I wanted to ask the question because you mentioned that Pro Sound Effects you have this like a free tool, like a platform that you like can distribute the sound effects with. Can you say again what the
Yeah,
name of
so
it is?
it's called Sound Q, sound with the letter Q at the
Mm.
end. And Nick Dyka, who was a previous guest, he was one of the original designers on it, actually. Um, and then Resonant Design, who are based in
Mm-hmm.
Berlin, they've helped with a lot of the design since then, and developed initially with an external team, but now we have a very small internal team who supports it. And this is just a free sound librarian tool for organizing.
Mm-hmm.
You can organize all your local sounds, that's fine. But if you own any sounds from us, you can just get access to them, so you don't have to store them locally. You can pull them down from the cloud. We also tie into Free Sounds API. So even if
Mm-hmm.
you don't have any sound effects on your hard drive or have any sound effects from Pro Sound Effects, you can search freesound.org to get some sound effects there. So it's I actually use it more personally for organizing my sample libraries as a musician,
Mm-hmm.
because I've collected a bunch on my own, and I've bought a bunch over time, and it's really nice to be able to go in and search for them, and also go through and add the metadata and embed it into the WAV file and stuff.
It's so cool, great. And I mean, do you have like in your mind some other amazing, interesting tools in the sound design space? Some kind of software tools that you would like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, sir. I mean, there's so much. It keeps expanding. I would say, so Sononym I mentioned earlier. That's a great one. Just another good sample librarian, but has some of these similarity search things put in. You talked to Matt from Krotos.
Yeah.
They make incredible stuff. I think really exciting. The sound particle stuff, I love. Nuno over there and that whole team, they just make really exciting creative tools. Data Mind Audio, I don't know if you know them. They make this generative instrument concatenator. I think it came out at EarCam, but just so cool. The work that Splice is doing, I was super excited by that Pro Tools integration, but we know a lot of the folks on the Splice team, and they're coming up with great stuff. If you haven't checked out, it was just incorporated into Adobe Firefly, and I don't have anything to do with this, but I just know some of the researchers who were working on it. It was called Sketch to Sound, and it was a research project.
Sketch to Sound.
I think it was Hugo Flores Garcia and Oriol Nieto, Justin Solomon, Prem Sietherman, Brian Pardo from Northwestern supported. But it's this idea of you can imitate a sound, and then it will generate a sound effect based on that.
Wow.
And this is in Adobe Firefly now, and it's so cool. It's so much fun. I just love that idea.
I need to check it out. You need to send me. I mean, I will just Google it when we finish for sure.
I'll send you the links if you want them for show notes and stuff. But it's just there's so many tools out there, and I get so little time to play with them because, I'm a product manager. Most of my time I'm in spreadsheets and email. Yeah. But there are so many great tools out there, and stuff like just the idea that a Zilia mic could exist, bringing high order ambisonics to musicians, that's incredible. And certainly, I mean, this isn't the same caliber, but it's great that I can do this and have a binaural render that sounds pretty darn good. It's exciting that sound design tools like this exist and can democratize that capability.
That's a nice conclusion. I think it's a nice ending for our conversation. And honestly, it's I say it with some regret, because it's just so great to talk to you, and it's always some amazing new things that you draw my attention to. That we'll continue talking also outside podcast, I hope, right?
Of course, 100%. Yes.
Yes, yeah. But so thank you very much, for this long conversation, and also thanking to the listeners. And
if you made it this long, good on you.
Yeah. We'll do it again for sure.
Yes, sounds good. And thank you so much for all you've done to organize this community, the Discord group, and these podcasts and the Academy. This is really great work you're doing here.
Oh, you see, actually, I just forgot to mention to all the listeners. There'll be also in the end of the podcast as well, all the that people can just find us on Discord and obviously on all the streaming platforms. That's obvious. But I will keep on doing for sure. Just this feedback like this. It's obviously not maybe the best way to make money, but it has to be done. So I will keep going. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Brad. So till the next one.
All right. Cheers, Wojciech.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you liked it. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and of course on our YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to it and hit the bell, because we publish a lot of interesting videos there, not just the episodes. You can also become a supporter and get premium content like additional reading, unpublished videos on our Buy Me a Coffee page, linked in the description of this episode. See you in the next one. Yo.